Support for To The Point comes from Bausch & Lomb.
Beautiful and healthy looking eyes? It shouldn't be a compromise. Lumify Eye Illuminations, developed by the experts at Bausch & Lomb exclusively for the sensitive eye area. To cleanse, nourish, and brighten. Lumify Eye Illuminations, only in the eye care aisle.
As much as we've learned about ocular surface disease, there is still so much yet to be discovered. The good news is, this creates a world of opportunity for eye care providers.
The goal of this podcast is to better understand this chronic and complex condition and keep you up to date on the advances being made in its diagnosis and treatment. So let's get to the point. Welcome to another episode of the To The Point podcast. My name is Jackie Garlich, and I am joined by my co-host, Jessilin Quint. Hi, Jessilin. How are ya?
Good. Hello, Jackie, and hello to all of our TTP listeners. Before we get started, thinking about dry eye, right? The whole reason why we're doing this podcast, I have to give a plug because I just was looking over conferences for the fall and looking at different agendas. And Mod Live is coming up at the end of September. And it has a really, if you haven't been to Mod Live, have you been to Mod Live yet?
You know what? Let me tell, well, I won't tell a long story. I was supposed to go and then I got COVID, I think, and that ruined that trip for me. So no, I have not been to Mod Live, but everybody talks about how great it is.
It's a really cool setup. It's usually like later on Friday, most of the day Saturday, and then on Sunday. And there's kind of a peppering of, glaucoma, presbyopia, practice management. I think this year they're even doing like how to get involved in industry, how to kind of develop your personal brand. But the dry eye side is really cool. So usually Mod Live is all about like the newest therapies, innovations, like what's really new and cutting edge. So anyway, got to give a shout out because the dry eye agenda for that's upcoming was really cool. So check out Mod Live's website to learn more.
And that's probably a good enough break between, we just got back from optometry's meeting, so we have a little breathing time before we go into another conference. So that's perfect. Good timing on that.
That's right. And at conferences, so our guest, I had the pleasure of meeting and sitting next to not that long ago. So this guest, how like you sit next to those people and you just know they know their stuff. Like you're just sitting next to them and they're just like this wealth of information and knowledge. And obviously so passionate. So when I was sitting next to Dr. Julie Poteet, I was just blown away at how much she knew regarding like nutrition and dry eye. And I'm so excited that she's our guest today.
I know, same. I mean, so if you haven't met her in person, which this is our first time virtually meeting, if you read any of her articles, you will feel the same. This woman knows what she's talking about in ocular nutrition. And actually so she's an OD. She did a residency at the VA in ocular disease. She is a certified nutrition specialist. She, after optometry school, had all kinds of free time and went and got her master's of science in human nutrition and functional medicine. And she is the past president. I know. She's a past president of the Ocular Wellness and Nutrition Society. So an absolute wealth of knowledge. So Julie, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're so excited to talk about ocular nutrition and learn from you and, hear about all of your experience and your education that you've gotten in this department. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jackie and Jessilin, for having me. Listen, I'm excited to dive into this topic that, quality of life, it really impacts quality of life for so many people. And, just finding out how we can address it from a nutritional standpoint that's my passion. So yeah.
I really think that nutrition is a very hot topic, and gut microbiome. And I think people are very familiar with this, but as a provider, I think it can be very confusing on what we should be doing and recommending, and how do we vet our own, the supplements that we recommend. And I kind of want to start from just the almost the science of this. Like, have you found there to be, or what studies have you found there to be pretty remarkable on nutritional supplementation for our dry eye patients? Are there studies that have really stood out to you that show the value of adding this to our treatment regimen?
Well, I think we all accept nutrition's critical role in meibomian gland dysfunction and how it is one of the biggest contributors to meibomian gland dysfunction. I mean, our society is sick. 1 out of every 2 of U.S. adults has diabetes or pre-diabetes. 3 in 4 are overweight or obese. Teenagers, 1 in 4 have pre-diabetes, 1 in 4 are overweight or obese, and 1 in 6 teenagers have fatty liver disease. So we know that our standard American diet is making us sick, and the eyes aren't immune to that. Chronic inflammation affects the meibomian glands significantly. And, we as eye care practitioners, dry eye, we know that omega-3s are anti-inflammatory, and have beneficial, impacts throughout the whole body. So I think the standard of care are what a lot of us have done, stage 1 of our dry management, we've put our patients on an omega-3. The supplement industry is the wild, wild west. It's unregulated. And, the data on the omega-3s is, unfortunately, it's a bit all over the place. I am a firm believer in the right type and amount of omega-3s in reducing inflammation and addressing ocular surface tear dysfunction. But again, the supplement industry is kind of, again, the wild, wild west. One study that has kind of turned everything upside down is the DREAM study. And I bring it up, but I'm going to bring it up. It changed the way a lot of practitioners practice. And, it was a study that looked at a well-formulated omega-3, 2-to-1 EPA to DHA triglyceride form. And basically the conclusions, which was all over the media, are omega-3s no better than placebo for reducing dry symptoms. One study. Now, I could pick apart the DREAM study and tell you what I don't agree with, because there are things I don't agree with. There are other studies that have shown, great efficacy with a triglyceride form of omega-3s, and, the right type and amount. So again, the data is inconclusive as far as, what you can find when you look at the data. So I think, the DREAM study kind of changed the way we practice and made us kind of stand back and think, okay, what now? One study that's just, come out that to me is very relevant to omega-3s. I have some colleagues in nutrition at George Washington University who, for a year in their lab, they looked at 72 over-the-counter commercially available fish oil products. And what they found is 68% of the flavored fish oil were found to be rancid, to exceed the total limit for rancidity and oxidation. 13% of the unflavored were found to be rancid. So, we can prescribe a specific omega-3 and patients will go out and they'll say, she wants me to take this one, but I'm going to get the cheaper one. And so taking oxidized oil is actually pro-inflammatory in the body. And so this gives me pause. This gives me a lot of pause. I am extremely excited, though, about a new formulation, a non-omega, that has been shown in 2 randomized placebo-controlled prospective studies to reduce inflammation and symptoms across the board in dry eye. In fact, the data on this new combination of nutraceuticals is better than any data on dry eye that I've seen. It was just launched at the AOA last week in Nashville. And I am extremely excited about this nutraceutical that is coming out. It's a non-omega again. And the beautiful thing about nutraceuticals, there is nutrient synergism that can happen in biochemistry where the sum of the parts, the whole actually is greater than the sum of the parts. And I truly believe that's what we're seeing with this new nutraceutical. This new nutraceutical is a combination of lutein, zeaxanthin, micronized curcumin, and vitamin D3. And what these randomized controlled trials showed was that OSDI scores reduced within 2 to 4 weeks. Tear volume scores increased. Tear osmolarity decreased. The most eye-opening, for pardon the pun, data on this study was MMP9 scores normalized in 56 days. And you just don't see that. I've not seen that with any other dry eye studies. And this is with an oral 1 pill a day nutraceutical. And I truly believe if this data that we've seen in these 2 randomized controlled trials, pans out, that this is going to revolutionize dry eye care. The beautiful thing about nutraceuticals is they work from the inside out. I think that dry eye is a multifactorial disease, and we need to address it, through multiple mechanisms. And to me, I think this is going to be a great adjunctive way to relieve symptoms, and address some of the underlying issues with dry eye. So.
I like that you brought up this new innovation, and I also was really blown away by the data, but also the timeline, because I think historically when I would think about nutrition and supplements and dry eye, I was always kind of thinking, all right, it's a minimum of 3 months, right, before we start to kind of see some improvement. But with this new data for Blink NutriTears, that's kind of what the formulation that we're talking about, 2 weeks, as soon as 2 weeks, right? Which is pretty remarkable. So for some of our patients, especially with dry eye, where we're wanting a little bit of a faster time period, I don't know. I was really like impressed by that number.
One of the other doctors on the panel called it unbelievably believable. So this, again, the beautiful thing about nutraceuticals as well is they don't just act on one pathway. And what's good for the ocular surface is going to be good for the retina. It's going to be good for the whole body. And that's why I love the power of evidence-based nutraceuticals. And, Jackie, you asked me about different supplements. It is a wild, wild west out there. And we as practitioners, must arm ourselves with what the evidence says. And again, I don't recommend nutraceuticals. I prescribe them. I prescribe what I've vetted and what I know to kind of be efficacious. So, but yeah, I think, there's a lot we can learn. The Ocular Wellness and Nutrition Society is considered a bridge between scientific studies and, clinical practice. And it is the only professional society for OMDs, ODs, PhDs with an interest in ocular nutrition. My viewpoint on nutrition now with our society and where we are, I think all of us should be embracing this movement. So it's just.
How do you start that conversation with your patients, that, any dry eye patient that you're seeing that, thinks they would benefit from a nutraceutical? How do you start that conversation, and what do you, what do you say to this patient?
So I think with our patients, I think with every patient, any intervention I prescribe, I give them a why. This is why I'm recommending it. This is what I'm seeing. This is why. This is why I want you to go and buy this nutraceutical. This is what it will do. This is what has been shown in clinical studies. This is what I'm addressing. And I think that if we give them a why, and I think follow-up is incredibly important. Follow-up increases compliance. So anytime I prescribe a nutraceutical, I always follow up within 2 months, just depending on what else I prescribe with it. So
Is your typical follow-up 2 months, and then after that 2 months, what does it look like after
it's
that?
typically initially 2 months, and then depending on what we do from there, it could be, another 2 months, 3 months. It just depends. So
This episode of To The Point is sponsored by Tarsus. Tarsus Pharmaceuticals applies proven science and new technology to revolutionize treatment for patients, starting with eye care. Tarsus is advancing its pipeline to address several diseases with high unmet need across a range of therapeutic categories, including eye care, dermatology, and infectious disease prevention. Tarsus is proud to announce that Xdemvy, lotilaner ophthalmic solution 0.25%, is FDA approved and available to prescribe.
Julie, do you also make recommendations or have a handout? Because this, the dry eye evaluation can take a long time, because a lot of things you're addressing are environmental impacts that a patient may not be aware of. And so, if we're trying to really change someone from the inside out, I mean, all disease begins in the gut, as this famously, said. Do you talk to your patients or give them a handout on just nutrition in general? And if so, what are your main recommendations for that?
I think it's pretty simple. I think we as eye care practitioners are perfectly poised to be on the front lines of the wellness movement, just simply because we can view with retinal photography the microvascular, without a lot of tissue overlying it, and that is an excellent predictor of kind of an early warning system to what's going on in the body from a vascular standpoint. And I use retinal photography to talk about nutrition and the macula with every single patient. And I talk about green leafy vegetables. If all else fails, green leafy vegetables and fatty fish twice a week. Those two things are what I really spend all day. I'm a broken record at work. All day long, I'm like green leafy vegetables, fatty fish, the smash, the salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, and herring twice a week, because you can look at fish oil supplements and get inconsistent data, but you look at fatty fish itself twice a week, and the data across the board for cardiovascular disease, for neurological disease, for just generalized inflammation in the body is consistent. That fatty fish twice a week is extremely beneficial. So yeah, every single patient in my chair, retinal photography, that's when I talk about nutrition. So again, I just think that ODs are perfectly poised to be on the front line of this movement. And if we don't embrace it, I think we're doing a disservice to our patients.
Absolutely. And so many of our patients are asking for kind of holistic approaches. What can I do? And so it's good to have that information to be able to, discuss it with our patients. For eye docs out there, dry eye docs out there that want to learn more or deep dive more, are there just overall really good resources? Like, where would you direct somebody? Is there like an organization, a website? Like, how does one start to learn the best way to vet supplements?
So the TFOS lifestyle reports are wonderful. They're always a great place to start. Again, the Ocular Wellness and Nutrition Society, become a member. I mean, that's a great place to start. The Ocular Wellness and Nutrition Society is partnered with the American Nutrition Association for their personalized nutrition practitioner program. I think that, again, we as practitioners must go with what the evidence says. And I truly think we have a new product that's going to transform the way we manage the dry symptoms, and a new nutraceutical. And I am actually really excited about it. So.
Julie, how do you handle a patient? So sometimes I'll when I'm recommending a supplement, a patient say, well, can I just eat this instead of actually taking a supplement? Can I change my diet and consume all of these things? And I've previously read the amount that a patient needs is really hard to consume in a, sort of day-to-day, food, meal. But how do you handle that question with your patients who say, I really don't want to do something. Can I just eat more fish, or can I just do whatever?
Well, yes to eating more fish. Actually, I don't know that I've ever had, I practice in an area. I just don't think I've ever, I wish somebody would ask me that question. I would love that. I want my patients to, get their nutrients from diet. But, the standard American diet only has about 1 to 2 milligrams of lutein, and we need around 20. We have to eat a lot of spinach or kale to get that much lutein. So, to me, it depends. It depends on the patient. If a patient's uber healthy and willing to eat a very clean diet, I'd say yes, go for it. But if they're uber healthy and eating a clean diet, they're probably not in the chair with these symptoms anyway, so.
Well, thinking of, new innovations, and I feel like, when MIBO first launched, all of us were kind of misspelling it, right? And so I know when I tried to prescribe it for the first time, I wasn't putting MIE, I was doing MEI. Well, I feel like I need to point this out, because if you just Google NutriTears, there's a different NutriTear supplement on Amazon that pops up that's probably not as vetted and maybe doesn't have possibly as much science to back it up. So I don't know. So I'm pointing that out because I feel like if I was, thinking about looking up some more about supplement, Blink NutriTears is the one that just launched, not just NutriTears. So But it is cool. It's over the counter. It's only one capsule. It doesn't have an omega-3, which I love. But there are obviously other brands out there, right? Like Hydra Eye, PRN. Julie, how do you, and I think also too with like other supplements, some of them have like different stamps of approval. So, Julie, when you're kind of vetting these, are there certain things that you look for to know that you're not getting like, a rancid omega-3, or how do you know that it's reputable out there in the wild, wild west?
So there are different supplement certifications. You can't go wrong if with NSF certification. It's the only independent third-party testing, and it ensures that what's on the label is actually in the bottle. They do a toxicology review to certify the product formulation and a contaminant review. So NSF certification, it is, you can't go wrong with that. Um, as far as the omega-3s, I do want to point out again, I'm, a huge fan and proponent of the right type and right amount of omega-3s. But one thing, practitioners need to be mindful of, they're going to prescribe ones that they vetted, such as, maybe they vetted the Hydra Eye or the Eye Promise, or, the PRN products, or the Nordic Naturals. Maybe they vetted these, and the Carlson, and they say, okay, these are good quality. But then the patient's going to go home and Google it. And the news media, because of the DREAM study, has cherry picked data and just, it's all over the internet. Omega-3s, are no better than placebo for dry eye. So I just think that, again, there's confusion out there in regards to the efficacy of omega-3s in dry eye therapy. And the last thing you want your patient to do is go out and buy a brand that is rancid and, take an oxidized fish oil. So that's one thing we just all need to be mindful of. And, the thing about the Blink NutriTears, it is a non-omega, and it's, it's a blend of nutraceuticals that act on inflammation. So.
How would you mitigate that? So that scenario you describe of patients going home and Googling something, how do you mitigate that in your chair before they leave your office? Do you explain why you're recommending this and say, how do you do that?
I tell them, I say quality and type matter. I explain to them about the dangers of oxidation and how a lot of over-the-counter products are oxidized. And I explain to them that it is the wild, wild west. I explain to them that the products that I prescribe, I've vetted, and the ones I prescribe, have shown efficacy. And I always tell them, I tell them I can't speak for the other ones, but I can speak for this one.
What about, the Blink NutriTears has the vitamin D, lutein, zeaxanthin, the curcuminoids, but I also hear, like, I have patients bring up like Mackey Berry and kind of these other supplements that are out there that, probably a news outlet said that it was good for dry eye. Have you found any of those kind of outside supplements that have been helpful for patients?
I'm not aware of any specific ones other than vitamin D. So vitamin D is very important. There's, correlation between low vitamin D levels and incidence of dry eye. And we know that, especially in our autoimmune patients. So vitamin D, vitamin D3, I even measure levels at times. The beautiful thing about lutein and zeaxanthin is they are also beneficial to the macula and to the brain. And the evidence there is consistent and strong. We know the macula needs lutein and zeaxanthin. We know the brain needs lutein. So these nutrients together have been shown to reduce ocular surface inflammation as well. We know we're helping the macula, and we know we're helping the brain. And I'm always going to recommend what has been vetted in clinical studies that are well designed. So, I'm not sure about these
Yeah,
other, what else you
honestly,
mentioned. So.
yeah, I mean, the same can be said for the, incredible amount of artificial tears that exist in the artificial tear aisle. When a patient walks down there, you would recommend one, but they may get a less expensive variety, and the technology isn't there to deliver the tear like we want it. So the same can be said for the artificial tear aisle. So I think giving the patient direction in your chair with the explanation of why you want them to take this particular thing is really valuable. help, get the patient on board with that as well. Thank you for talking with us, Julie, I really do want to encourage people to go to the Ocular Wellness and Nutrition Society. I think I myself have not visited that site, and I will absolutely do this because I do think nutrition can be a confusing thing to providers, and the more we know, the better we can treat our patients. So it seems like a very good resource, and thank you so much for talking with us tonight about this. And
Well, thank you for having me, and it's been a joy. And you guys are great in what you're doing, and I just keep up the great work. And I appreciate I'm honored to be involved and be a member on your show tonight. Thank you.
Well, we can't leave just yet, right? We have a tradition going here where we have a life lens where we need to find out what Julie's is. So if you're new to listening to the Point, a life lens is something that like you can't live without. It's something that's really changed your life or been really impactful. So Julie, what's yours?
So I'm just going to give a quote by Mark Twain, and I think this is so applicable to so many areas of our lives. It ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. In other words, follow those who seek the truth, flee from those who found it. And I think, we as doctors, we're lifelong learners. And, I'm very passionate about what we do and the ability to change lives through patient care. So I'm always wanting to follow the science. And, I appreciate you guys for inviting me here this evening and to talk about what the science says. So.
that's great. Happy to learn from you. Thank you for taking the time, Julie.
Thank you for being here. I feel like the world needs what Dr. Poteet eats in a day, the dry eye edition. Like those YouTube videos. Like we need to make this happen. You
Just
would
eat
be
your green
awesome.
leafy vegetables and fatty fish. That's all.
Well,
Perfect. It's
so
perfect.
truth be told, as I was doing some, I'm going to call it research, but it might be called stalking to some people on Julie before this podcast. I did see this video of like you being like, this is what I do on my day to day. And it started out with you running or going for a run in the morning. And I was like, this is what we all need. See, the answer is just move your body and feed it good foods. That's it.
Right. Well, it's
Lead
pretty
by example,
simple.
practice what you preach.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for being here, Julie.
Thank you so much for having me, ladies. You guys have a great night. Thank you.